RevOpsAF, the only podcast for people who are RevOpsAF and want to learn all about things that are RevOps AF.
Our goal is to give the revenue operations community, that includes marketing, sales, and CS, for any of you not paying attention, the skills needed to accelerate their careers.
Hello and welcome to RevOpsAF, the podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Kamala Thompson, and today I am joined by Jessica Boiardi. Jessica, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, Kamala. I'm Jess Boiardi. I've spent over 15 years in media and revenue operations. I've built my career around creating processes, driving results. My experience spans leadership roles at Group Black, BuzzFeed, Complex, and Turner. And I've managed pricing and planning, media operations, and programmatic groups throughout my time. Currently, I'm the vice president of revenue operations at Group Black. I've built 3 different teams from the ground up, implementing systems like Booster to streamline our workflows and optimize our performance. Beyond that, I'm so deeply involved in my community. I am a board member of Queens Community Board 5. I'm on the board of a non-for-profit called Through the Heart, and I volunteer my time in my community through Queens Community House, spending time with the elderly once a week for an hour.
And you're a parent.
Yeah. And
that is...
Yep. So I didn't even touch on that, but the point of this conversation is about parenting and working in revenue roles and how we mix that with parenting. I am a mother of 2. I have a 3-year-old and a very recent 9-year-old, and they have been with me throughout this whole ride. So I feel like when I started managing people pretty heavily, that's when I had my son. So it was learning 2 jobs at the same time.
And it's so interesting because I noticed I even leaned into the, oh my gosh, you're a mom, how do you do it all? Like we criticize so many interviewers of doing, but I want to point out, I think this is largely due to I'm not saying anything about your household, but a lot of households still have very uneven distribution of responsibilities.
Sure.
So I think that's a reflection of a lot of households I see. The mom does carry a lot of the caregiving and things that people don't often think about, like scheduling doctor's appointments and making sure all the food is taken care of and all that good stuff.
Yeah, but something like that is a great example. So I needed to go food shopping this week, and we had so much stuff this weekend. And it was freezing in New York, so I had to do drop-off. I did drop-off for my son at school. We went a little bit earlier. I went to Trader Joe's between that and dropping off my daughter at school. So I did full food shopping in 15 minutes and then dropped off all the groceries, put them away really quick with my husband, and then we brought my daughter to school. So I feel like efficiency is so key in these moments. I'm not spending the time walking around, figuring things out as I go along. I have a plan in a lot of the things that I do in a lot of my weeks. I keep a very, very detailed calendar with my husband. We're definitely partners in all of that, everything that we do. And there's things that I want to do outside of work and outside of being a mom that are very important to me. They've always been pretty important to me. Giving back to my community is huge. I'm born and raised in Queens. I love everything about this borough, and I really want to give back as much as I can. That was something that was very clear in my relationship. That was, I'm going to be a mom through and through, and I'm going to work my hardest, but I really want to be on the community board, or I really want to be a part of a non-for-profit, or I want to sit with an elderly in the neighborhood once a week for an hour before work after drop-off. You have to figure it out, and I feel like is the balancing act that every parent has in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and for anyone who's willing to challenge or look at how society leans into all of this, there's a good documentary called Fair Play. I'm sure there's other resources we'll be bringing up.
Yep.
But we're going to start at this from a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
The irony. I want to talk about this a little bit from a content perspective and what's helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think we see a lot of panels featuring parents or moms.
Mm-hmm.
What do you look for as a parent attending one of those sessions? What do you want to see?
I want authenticity through and through. So I feel like anything that feels really scripted or feels like it is so like PR focused is just not what I want to hear. I want to hear truly what it's like to be a parent, parenting children, particularly for me, younger children. My son is 9, but my daughter is 3. And I very, very much remember those infant phases and how challenging they were and how different they are. And I can relate way more to that. Just some of the content that has been really valuable to me has been some of the podcasts I listen to or some of the conversations I've even had with some people in the workplace has been about just those authentic conversation, what I can take away, what an actionable advice I can take away, and just things that make the most sense to me in my parenting journey.
I would love to get a little more specific about what's helpful to you. And I realize that changes as your situation changes, but I would love to hear like the types of things you're grateful for or wish was out there.
So I think it's a little bit of the opposite. A lot of the panels that just haven't worked for me or some of the content that I've listened to and immediately shut off are the ones that are a little bit more out of touch. I am very grateful for my in-laws. They are amazing and they are helpful when I need them to be helpful. But we don't have a tremendous amount of people around us that are willing to help us all the time. I don't have a nanny. We're doing it ourselves. We're figuring out pick up, drop off, extracurriculars ourselves around work. I am one of many parents that do that. And I think that when I've heard panels of parents that are either their children are a lot older or they do have a tremendous amount of help, it's just not very helpful for me. I don't have that luxury and I'm in what I'm in. And I find that the conversations that are a lot more authentic to who I am or how I am raising kids while working has just been a lot more helpful. I feel like, too, I have an amazing village of moms that I am in group chats with, that I see on a monthly basis, that we're all working parents and we all talk about the different difficulties that we have together. Having that group of people that are also in it with me has been just extremely helpful. We share podcasts that we like. We share books. We even share socials that are really relevant. I feel like a lot of my social feed is parents that are trying to just get through the days sometimes and get through the weeks. And I have related more to that than some of the things that I wish I had or that I regret.
It's a lot.
It is. And I feel
a lot
like
to deal with.
the conversation is so important. You hear about balance all the time. Balance is something that comes up in every panel, every podcast, every like parenting book you read. Every parent will talk about balance. Balancing your career goals with what your present family looks like. Balancing what you're looking for in your career while still being a present parent. I feel like everybody looks at that so differently, though. For me, balance is keeping like an OCD type calendar and making sure that at every moment of every day, my partner knows really where I might not be or where I might be, what I can really achieve and what I can't. And then it's the reality of things. I'm not going to cook dinner every night. I'm just not going to be able to do something like that. And sometimes we'll share that, or sometimes we'll have to just order out. I feel like knowing when to outsource has been really important. The things that I need to outsource, the things that are just not as important to me are sometimes cooking dinner. My kids don't care. They're not going to lose their minds if we order pizza one night or 2 nights a week. They're going to be actually very thrilled that they don't have to eat a vegetable. But that's just something that I have to just think about and be very reasonable about. Balance is going to come up in any conversation that when we talk about parenting, but how I look at balance is going to be very different than some of my friends, some of my colleagues, even how my boss might look at balance. And finding somebody you could relate to when it comes to it and maybe taking some advice is really important as well.
I'd love to hear people be honest that balance isn't always achievable.
Yeah.
I don't have children. We still have emergencies pop up and all sorts of, life happens.
Yep.
How do we adapt to those situations? And I think that's just as critical for parents, is to not feel like they're doing something wrong if balance isn't always achievable.
And there's definitely times of the year that it's easier. Times, and my son is older, so in the 9 years of his life where balance was a lot easier than others. And it kind of is like that. My 2024 was just not easy. I did not balance it well. There were times throughout the year that I just couldn't get it together. But there were times that I did it really well. And there were times that worked really right. And I could feel it. And I know when things are working and when weeks are easier than others. But I feel like going into the week, knowing sometimes that this is going to be a rough one. I'm in back-to-back meetings every single day. I have very long days ahead of me. This isn't going to be a week where I'm going to make the most perfect healthy meal for dinner, or I'm not going to pack like all of the like surprises in his lunchbox. And that's okay, because there's going to be weeks that are going to be perfect and that are going to work a lot better.
So let's talk a little bit about, and again, I'd like to start this from a slightly different place, because I think a lot of organizations have processes, policies in place for parents, but how bosses and especially peers adapt and respond to it isn't consistent at all. So maybe we start with, on a peer-to-peer basis, how would you like to be supported by a peer?
Yeah, I think the big one is being inclusive. So similar to how I am at home, my calendar at work is like every meeting, everything is very blocked off, very specific, but I use my working hours very specifically as well. If I have to pick up at 5 p.m., if there's a meeting that has to happen after 5 p.m., not just putting it on my calendar, being inclusive of the fact that I will be a very top achiever between my working hours of 9 to 5. But after 5, between 5 and bedtime, I really am a mom. And that's really what I want to do and what I'm trying to do. So avoiding like any key meetings during that time frame, or being just a little bit more inclusive for meetings that you know that you want me in, that you need me in. I think that's very important. And knowing that might not always work. So if there is a week that there has to be a meeting at a certain time, just sharing it with me and just telling me so I can plan ahead, and not plan ahead in the next 20 minutes, but plan ahead with a day or so. Thinking about coverage is really important as well. So I'm the VP of my group, but I've got very senior people on my team that I know that if I can't make a meeting, I can tap them in. I've worked through that. I've figured that out at every organization I've been at. I've been really mindful of that as well. So offering those stretch assignments for team members that are looking to move ahead is great for those times where I'm only one person and I can't be in a million places at once. Flexibility is huge. So just being mindful of schedules and respecting the parents' boundaries that are working. So if I say that I really can't work past 5 o'clock, it's not asking me a million questions. It's knowing that I have kids, that they're in school, that they're in after school, and I have to get them. And with every minute that I don't get my daughter, that costs me money. So I'd really like to try to stay within those time frames. And that's a boundary that I really don't want broken. So I feel like when you're talking about like organizations, it's championing everybody's needs, knowing that parents might have very different needs in the workplace, but they're there to work. We are very much want to be working parents, and we want to be as empathetic as we can be throughout the day, because we are bringing a ton of empathy at home, and we're trying to figure out what our kid is crying over, throwing themselves on the floor after work. And during the day, we want to know what the big problems are that we could be empathetic to as well. We can switch it on and off, but we're going to always be parents, and we just are looking definitely for that flexibility throughout the day if we have to do pickup, if our kid is sick, if there are things that are just happening that we want to be a part of.
Let's talk a little bit about networking, because not everybody is in a certain place in their career. It's super critical to do. What can people, like, one thing I can think of to make things a little bit easier is to plan something consistent or give people plenty of heads up. What are other things that people should be considering when it comes to including parents?
So we love going to things. I love having a happy hour to look forward to, or a conference to look forward to. I definitely want to step away from the day-to-day at times and focus on my growth and my development too. And we need time to plan. So I feel like those last minute changes or those last minute things that pop up are always the things that bring us a ton of anxiety. If you tell me that there's going to be like a great company dinner that we want you to be a part of next week, that's great. That gives me time to think about if I need a sitter or if I need somebody to cover any meetings I'm in or anything like that. But if you change it 3 times, likely I'm done. I'm not coming then because I've already changed the sitter 3 times. I've already changed what my workday looks like 3 times. I've already changed what I'm wearing 3 times, like I don't want to have to overthink too much when it comes to that, but we want to be there like that. I think that's the misconception that I've been a part of at other organizations. Just because I'm a parent doesn't mean I don't want to come to a dinner, or I don't want to work through a mentorship program, or I don't want to take this professional development class. Like I very much want that. I just need the time to plan it.
That makes a ton of sense. What do you wish managers knew or took into consideration a little bit more?
I feel like with women, pregnancy is always very hard and it comes with a lot of emotion. When I was pregnant at my first job, I had a very different experience than my second because of the manager that I was working under. Now I've lived through it and I've lived through loss. I've lived through different periods of pregnancy that were scary, that were exciting, that were all of the above. And it didn't always show it on my face. So there were tons of times that I would come into work sick or like ready to run right to the bathroom for morning sickness, or that I just was uncomfortable, that I would be sitting in a meeting and be exhausted. And it wasn't a reflection of me. It was pregnancy was really hard for me. And I feel like for any woman who is trying or that is in the midst of it, managers should realize that. They don't have to ask a million questions, but just knowing that as you're growing another human, it does take a lot out of you. And maybe a 6:30 meeting after a really long week is not it. And then the flip of it too is that it's not easy for anybody. It's not just the mom that is challenged by being a working parent. Dads are challenged too. There's so many different family types that we shouldn't just assume that the mom has the biggest burden. There are definitely different family types that we have to consider as management. And then the whole parenting your parent piece. So as your employees are growing, so are their parents. And there are different points in an employee's life where being a parent to your parent is so important. And it doesn't matter if you have your kids of your own or not, but elderly parents can be really challenging. And I feel like the empathy piece that managers need to have is so important at that point of employees' lives. Like you can try all you want to leave that at the door when the day starts, but if you are in the midst of having a parent who is sick or who has dementia or is just getting older, like that weighs on you as a person. So I feel like just being empathetic is so important. I've said that word so many times over this conversation, but there is so much to an employee in general that is just not on their face day to day. Yeah, I have bags under my eyes. I'm a tired mom. I get it. You could see it, but there are so many other things that when you look at your employee, you may not see. And whether they're a parent or not, it's really important to just check in on people and see how they're doing. If you work in a remote environment, it's very important in that environment as much as it is in being in an office. And there are definitely the parenting a parent piece that just becomes more challenging as your employees move up in an organization and as they get older.
Great point. Very relatable. We all have stuff.
Yeah.
Are there other things you'd like to speak about on this topic before we transition into where to network and your session at RevOps?
I think just the mental load of parenting is important. Whether you share responsibilities or it's fully on you, that's still responsibilities. So you mentioned it in the beginning of the conversation, who makes the doctor's appointments, who remembers when the dentist actually is or which dentist we're going to this time. All of those things are weigh on you. And there are definitely times that I wake up in the morning that I'm like, I don't know what I needed to do, but I know I needed to do something. The mental load is something that I feel like we should talk about a little bit more, that it's a responsibility that is both like at work and at home. You're sharing that mental load with your employees or with your team or your partner or spouse, or you're handling it by yourself at home, depending upon the family that you're in. And then just representation too. I feel like when you're thinking about panels or you're thinking about conversations you want to listen to, representation in parenting discussions is so important. Not every parenting family is a mom and a dad. You have single parents, you have non-traditional family structures, you have just so many different ways that families look now, that I find it so much more authentic when you're hearing about it from people that are in it, and it's not forced, but it's actually a conversation that's being had. I think about my group of moms. I have this unbelievable group of, there's 7 of us. And when you put us at a table, we go to dinner a couple times a year. But when we sit at a table and you look at us, we look so different from one another. We have different jobs. We have so many different careers. You've got a teacher, you have an architect, you have a chemist, you've got somebody who works in tax, all of these different careers. But that point that brings us all together is that we are all working moms. We're trying our best. We really give it our all. And we have such hard conversations with each other because we know that we can all relate. Like every time that we have these conversations, when we look for advice, when we're trying to figure things out, they're not always the fun things. It's not just always planning the birthday party. It's figuring out end of life for a parent, or it's figuring out how to talk to your boss about how you're going to get things done in the time frame that they're giving you. We're all really just trying to figure it out, but there are so many relatable conversations that you could have with one another that even when you look at somebody and you're like, they probably won't get it, they definitely will get it.
So let's talk about where people can find you to network and a little bit about your session at RevOpsAF in New Orleans.
Yep. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's Jessica Boiardi. You can find me on Instagram. It's J Boiardi. I am more than happy to chat. I love these conversations, and I find there's so much value in just that honest conversation about being a working parent. And then at RevOpsAF, we're going to just continue this conversation amongst other parents and figure out if any of us really have found that balance. And spoiler alert, we have not. None of us can find the balance, but we're all going to continue working towards it.
It's part of the human condition. I don't know many of us who have. So I'm excited to hear the session.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode, everybody.
For more great content like this, join our community at RevOpsCoop.com and check out the links provided in the show notes.